Hello and welcome to the Old Flyers. 2024 was the 20th year that the Old Flyers group members have met for lunch whilst enjoying talks on all manner of aviation subjects. This year we have had 11 presentations from 10 speakers. Here are short grabs from those presentations.
So after about the fifth day, all of a sudden, no clouds. So off we went, and my escort was Pierre Duke and the OC of number 3 squadron, Freddy Toy.
It was about 1,600, give or take, of which probably half of them didn't go back to the sky at all. So yes, there are a lot of stories. I've decided to make it a little bit sort of general and not get into the detail of accidents and why they happened and how we discovered things. It's
with Angel Flight, that's how we got involved with the 9/11 situation. We'd been operating a few years, and that's the basic pilot requirements. This is just a general map so you can look at the geography of what took place. With the arrows on the left is Tulsa and Oklahoma City, and the other arrow is Louisville, where we flew to, and the circle is up in New York. On 9/11, when it happened, there's a lot of confusion. Nobody knew what was going on. It was bad. And I remember the first plane hit the tower, and it was, well, was it an accident? Was it this? Was it that? What's happening? And I remember talking to my wife, Delia's cousin, on the phone, looking at the TV screen, and saw the other airplane coming. Whoop, that was number 2. Well, you knew then it was not accident, that it was terrorist or something else going on. One thing that happened immediately is they grounded aviation. You couldn't even taxi across the airport. You couldn't move. That was it.
Very much, Steve, and thanks for the invitation to come and talk about the F-35. I'll just have a comment on Doug's talk about the 9/11. I was visiting and spent a bit of time at the Pentagon in my service career, and I was talking to my colleagues who were actually there on the day they got hit. Interestingly, they were in another part, obviously, and I said, what was the effect on you when you heard it? And they said, we didn't even know that it had been hit in part of the building. They were around the other side somewhere. It's obviously a pentagon shape, and it's actually multiple pentagons within each. And they said they just started to notice people panicking, running around, but they didn't actually hear it or see it.
Marines are only in the news when something untoward happens. And then everyone who's never been on one is an instant expert. Many years ago, I was training on a newspaper, and an old fellow said to me, do you want to be a reporter or a journalist? And I said, what's the difference? He said, a reporter reports facts, a journalist tells stories. And I would remind you that if you don't get the news, you're uninformed. If you do get the news, you're ill-informed.
The first thing in building your defence is to name your enemy, which is China, of course. Now, you may have seen this slide before, but it's very important, because China intends to attack the civilised world when they only provide about 60% of their plant protein they base their whole agricultural system on. And the other 40% is mostly soybeans imported, as per this graphic. So what you see on the bar on the left, the column on the left, is the millions of tonnes involved per grain type in soybeans, and the column on the right is the proportion of total Chinese consumption represented by those grains. So soybeans are 36% protein, wheat's 8 to 10% or up to 12%, and thus those 100 million tonne per annum soybeans is 36% of Chinese agricultural production or consumption.
I point out the Viet Cong were only a small factor in the war. The bigger factor was the North Vietnamese Army. On the Delta was Operation Sea Lords. The Americans love acronyms. Sea Lords stood for sea, air, land, ocean, rivers, deltas and streams. And this was a lot of patrol boats, small craft that ran through the canals and the swampy, marshy areas down in the Delta. During run of the Vietnam War, I did 2 tours on board a destroyer called the Perth, and each tour you would do around about 30 days, what we called on the gun line. You'd be up in the Gulf of Tonkin or down on the gun line, and then you'd have a port call, back for another 30 days and a port call, and this would go on for quite a while. The Perth was assigned to the 7th Fleet from 1967 to 1971.
Also sent interpreters, although the interpreters were monolingual, they weren't bilingual, but the whole point of taking the interpreter was to have someone who could negotiate the ransom, which was always going to be paid. One of the issues was obviously finding places to stop en route, to refuel, for the pilots to rest and so on. And one of those spots was Cape Juby, and he needed someone to manage the station, Cape Juby, and he assigned Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, who we'll meet later on, to be station manager there. And in fact, station manager meant that he had to find pilots who got lost in the desert.
Aviation commenced in circa 1923. In the beginning, there were only dreams of flying. As Leonardo da Vinci once said, "For once you have tasted flight, you will walk the earth with your eyes turned skywards. For there you have been, and there you will long to return." Now, Norman Brearley, he was the first aircraft. He started West Australian first airline, West Australian Airways Proprietary Limited. It took delivery of its first aircraft, an Avro 504K.
It's my role today to talk to you about, as advertised up there, Operation Nickel, but particularly the evolution of covert operations in South Africa or in Southern Africa. But because of the format, I'm going to just diverge slightly, if I might, and I'm going to rather focus on another very important thing. I'm doing a lot of writing at the moment. I'm in a very sort of introspective phase of my life. And because I'm a writer, I'm busy downloading my head, and I'm busy trying to make sense of what my life has been about, and trying to hopefully distill some nuggets out of that and pass it on to next generations for those that care, because the world is changing so rapidly. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to talk about that subject in the second part. But the first part, I want to, the first 10 minutes or so, I just want to talk about innovation.
The story I was going to tell you was about Colditz. So Marty, myself and my brother left London. Now we didn't go leave London Airport, we left London, not Heathrow, but London Airport. Has anyone been to London Airport? The one, it's one that it's just in London. You can take a tube there, and it's just a single runway, I think, isn't it? And you can only take up to 737s, I think. I'm not sure, but small aircraft. We left there, and we flew down to Berlin, and then we hired a car and went down to Colditz. Now, Marty Byrne, now I'm 67, and I've known Marty 60 years.
Thanks for watching. Can't wait to see what 2025 brings.